Okay, ladies and gentlemen, can we come to order, please? Thank you for attending this evening's Planning Committee meeting. I'm Caleb Tomlinson. I'm the Councillor for Bamber Bridge West, and I'm the chair of the committee. Committee members and members of the public are reminded that this meeting is being recorded and streamed live to YouTube. If you're attending the meeting because you're a member of the public who has registered to speak, please note you have a time limit of 4 minutes. You will be timed and I will confirm when 4 minutes runs out, and you should then finish. Or if you're in the middle of a point, make your point and wind up. You come forward to the microphone at this table and press the speak button. Okay, voting will be undertaken by the electronic voting system, and the outcome of the vote will then be confirmed by our legal officer, Alex, once it's complete. If you have mobile phones with you this evening or mobile devices, can you either turn them off or switch them on to silent, please? Okay, following the previous committee meeting, I'd like to address a few important points. The Planning Committee of the Council is required to adhere to the National Planning Policy Framework, also known as the NPPF. I understand that planning decisions can be extremely emotive subject for those they affect. However, this committee operates in a quasi-judicial capacity and must be seen to act fairly, balanced and lawfully. As chair of this committee, I will not tolerate shouting, intimidation or abusive behaviour. If this occurs this evening, I will adjourn this committee, the room will be cleared, and we will hear this application in private. I hope I make myself clear. Okay, we're not anticipating a fire drill this evening, so if the fire alarm goes off, the fire escapes are here and here. I feel like a flight attendant. There you go. Okay, if I can ask everyone to introduce themselves, starting with the gentleman on my left.
Good afternoon, Alex Jackson, Legal Services Team Leader.
Nina Niceberg, Democratic and Member Services Officer.
Peter Gabbett, Councillor for Lostock Hall.
Good evening, Councillor Phil Smith, and I represent New Longton and Hutton East.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Ange Turner. I represent Penwith and Broadoak.
Councillor Peter Molyneux, Sandbury and Walton Ward.
Good evening, Hayden Williams representing Leyland Central.
Good evening, Councillor Mary Green representing Moss Side and Midge Hall.
Good evening, Councillor Elaine Stringfellow, Councillor for Lostock Hall.
Good evening, Debbie Roberts, Development Management Team Leader.
Good evening, Catherine Thomas, Planning Manager. Good evening, Elizabeth Thornber, Head of Planning and Enforcement.
Okay, thanks everyone. I'd like to give a warm welcome to our new member, Councillor Angela Turner. Welcome to the committee. I hope this is a baptism fire for you. All right, I have had apologies of absence this evening from Councillor Peter Pillinger and Councillor Chris Lomax, and both their substitutes are also on holiday. So, do we have any declarations of interest in this evening's meeting? No. Okay, minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of April 2025. I have the minutes of the meeting in front of me. I would like to propose these subject to an amendment at minute point 86 to read: a vote was taken to defer the application to allow time for a site visit to be arranged for committee members, and the vote was lost. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. It may be another amendment, but when the proposal was proposed, I mean, I viewed it again today, we were going to go at a time, I think it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever it was. That was the proposal, that we would then be able to see that the sort of children coming out of school in numbers. That didn't happen. The meeting was called for sort of 8:40. I arrived in the morning. I arrived at 8:30 in the morning. And unfortunately, as far as I can remember now, I didn't see a single child, and all the children were already at school. So the bit that I really went for to see about the safety of the road and the highway actually didn't happen. So I don't know whether we need an amendment in there, Chair, or whether we just take it as it is. But that's my view of what we should have been doing at that time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Smith. The minutes aren't verbatim. They're just an overview of what went on in the evening. Some of us did independent site visits because we couldn't make the arranged one. And I know some people did do the 3 o'clock till 3:45 visit. So I'm quite happy to sign them off with that one amendment, if that's okay for everybody. So can we go to the electronic vote? If you weren't here, you need to abstain. Oh, can I have a seconder for that then, please? Councillor Gabbert. Alex, are we happy now? I've got a seconder.
Yes.
Can we go to the vote, please? Don't forget, if you weren't here, you need to abstain.
Thank you, Chair. Members have voted to approve the minutes of the last meeting, subject to the amendment to point 86.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Moving on to item number 5 this evening, appeal decisions. Catherine, if you'd give us the good news.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we've received 4 appeal decisions since the last planning committee meeting. The first of these relates to an enforcement notice appeal. The council served an enforcement notice on a site at Duxbury's Garden Centre on 92 Chainhouse Lane in Whitestake, where a part of the site was being used. There'd been an authorised change of use for a traffic management compound. This inspector considered the appeal and has dismissed the appeal and upheld the enforcement notice, which is really good news. We've also had 3 other appeal decisions made for similar applications, for permission in principle applications. The first one was at Fairfield Long Moss Lane in New Longton, and that was the erection of 1 dwelling and associated development. And again, the inspector dismissed the appeal. The site lies in the green belt, and the inspector found that there would be harm to the green belt, and there were no very special circumstances that had been demonstrated to outweigh the harm. Our next appeal is at land adjacent to Banks Farm on Dobb Lane at Walmer Bridge in Preston. Again, this is a permission in principle application for up to 3 dwellings, and the same conclusion was reached. And our last appeal decision is 1 Higher Nabs Head Farm, Nabs Head Lane in Samlesbury. This was a permission in principle application for 4 dwellings. And again, the same conclusion was reached by the inspector, so that appeal was also dismissed. So very good news this month for members.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Catherine. Let's move on to the item agenda that I think everybody's here for. Item number 6, land north of Cocker Lane, Leyland. Debbie, if you could do your report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, it's stuck. Here we go. Right, okay. Apologies to everybody present, but for the benefit of the members who weren't here last time, I will need to repeat some of the presentation. Okay, so the application site is a U-shaped tract of grassland to the north of Cocker Lane, Leyland. So,
yeah, is anybody struggling to hear this? Thank you. IT, can you turn it up, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. Thank you. Okay, to the north is dense woodland, beyond which is Fosdale Moss Park. To the east is woodland separating the site from Schleswig Way, which is a bypass. To the west, we have partly constructed dwelling and Gillyflower Court, which is residential. And beyond that, we've got dense residential. And to the south is Cocker Lane. The site wraps around numbers 19 and 21 Cocker Lane, which are these 2. Access to the site is in the southwest corner via a field gate. There isn't any public access through the site at the moment, but there is a path connecting Cocker Lane to Fosdale Moss Park along the eastern boundary. Cocker Lane is adopted to approximately midway across the site frontage around here. From that point, it's adopted, but it continues east to connect to a well-made path in council ownership, which forms the western side of a bypass crossing. I'll come to that in a little bit. The area, fairly suburban in feel, but it's wider. The wider area is characterised by large-scale dense residential development in a mix of styles, including a number which are recently constructed. There are commercial, educational and industrial uses, plus the test track residential-led development within half a mile of the site entrance. The site itself is allocated as existing built-up area by policy B1 of the local plan. So there is a presumption towards development, subject to all other matters being acceptable. Okay, the proposal seeks outline permission for up to 23 dwellings, with all matters other than access reserved. Access is proposed from the southwest corner of Cocker Lane, adjacent to the existing site gate. Matters of appearance, landscape, layout and scale are reserved for later consideration and are subject to change, but indicative drawings show cul-de-sac arrangement with appropriately sized and spaced plots which reflect the wider area, retained and enhanced landscaping and a permeable layout with appropriate aspects into, from and through the site. It's clear from the indicative plan that it's possible to accommodate 23 units with relevant infrastructure, amenity and public open space without detriment to the wider street scene. Okay, we had some concerns from residents with regards to highway work. Now, the applicant has worked with Lancashire County Council Highways team to arrive at a scheme which the Lancashire County Council, as the Highways Authority, are happy with, subject to conditions. Those conditions are at the end of your report. This basic drawing shows new pavements and highway improvements, which would facilitate the site development and make transit from and to dwellings and the local school much safer. There is some hedgerow to be cut back, but it is minimal, and that was identified to members on the recent site visit and since. The site was suggested for housing during the call for sites for the emerging Central Lancs local plan and rejected because at that time access couldn't be facilitated. With this agreed scheme, that's now not the case. Okay, just the same plan. At the last meeting, some of the residents were unhappy with the loss of grass verges and other areas which have been often used for bin storage for access and to facilitate parking. This same proposal drawing has an overlay of the adopted highway in green. Now, this adoption plan's up to date. I got it from Lancashire County Council this week. And as you can see, all the works proposed for this scheme are within the public highway, and they are all acceptable to Lancashire County Council as the landowner and Highways Authority. Just one point to note that the highway, including the verges, is not private land. And whilst residents might use it, they have no legal right to do so. And Lancashire County Council can change that at any point, regardless of whether this decision is approved or refused. Okay, just a view of the path from Schleswig Way. The photograph is the eastern end of Cocker Lane where it meets the bypass. The smaller aerial view shows the same point where the star is. So this is the development site here on the left. I don't know if you can see my cursor. Sorry, you can't. The top left-hand photograph, the larger piece of open land, is the development site. Arguably, children shouldn't be encouraged to cross the bypass as a route to school. But if that, please, can I finish? But if,
all right. Can we settle down, please? Thank you.
If that is the case, then the proposals, which include considerable lengths of pavement, must benefit rather than offer harm to those children who already pass through dense residential but unpaved areas of Cocker Lane to access the meeting. So there is benefit and betterment from this scheme. Okay, just some photographs. Numbers 19 and 21 are on the right. Just off the photograph, you can just see them. We've got the partly constructed dwelling.
Debbie, could you repeat what you just said for Councillor Turner? She didn't hear you.
Sorry, Debbie, the start of, you talked about children crossing the road.
Yeah.
And then obviously there was a reaction, possibly understandably, but I didn't hear what you said at that bit. Sorry. So thank you.
Oh, saying that it's not ideal that children cross the road, use Cocker Lane to cross a bypass to go to school. But they're already doing that, and they're already passing down Cocker Lane on an unpaved, partially unmade road. This scheme will provide pavements, and it will provide betterment in terms of pedestrian safety. If it already happens, we need to make it better, and that this scheme can do that. Right, numbers 19 and 21 Cocker Lane are just visible on the corner of the site. This is the site on here. Recently approved dwelling, which is on the western side, is here, and the existing and proposed access points are roughly around here. I've skipped one. Okay, numbers 19 and 21 Cocker Lane. The site wraps to the rear. You can just see the western side of that site. And the same view, but the eastern part of the site is where the arrow is. That's adjacent to number 21 Cocker Lane. There is no statutory objection. We've had a number of letters of representation which are detailed in the report, but in summary, the proposal is within the existing built-up area, which, as I said earlier, has a presumption towards development where all other matters are considered acceptable. All those matters have been found acceptable, subject to conditions by the statutory consultees. The site would support the council's 5-year supply as a windfall site. There's a fully compliant 30% affordable housing. This is subject to change because it's outlined, but they're indicating 7 affordable houses. A public public open space on and off-site contribution, which would work towards amenity green space at Maltkiln Fold and Worden Park playing pitches. Now, they are capital projects agreed with the Parks Department as per the Section 106 regulations. There would be a SIL payment, which I estimate at around £400,000 towards local infrastructure. That, again, is subject to change depending on the final scheme. And a sum of £215,000 financial contribution to provide 9 primary school places in Leyland. The scheme is policy compliant. There is no policy reason to refuse in officer's opinion. So we would recommend approval with conditions, with a decision delegated to the chair and vice chair and the head of planning and enforcement on completion of a legal agreement to secure public open space, school places and affordable housing. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your presentation, Debbie. I have 5 registered speakers in objection to this application. The first one is a Michael Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, I'm Michael Johnson, retired lecturer, and I live at 11 Cocker Lane. I am here tonight representing my local community. People are outraged and dismayed for the location chosen in regards to this highly inappropriate planning application. The applicant proposes to remove the grass verges on both sides of this unique and historic lane. A footpath is proposed for the south side and a widening of the lane on the north side. The issue here is that on the north side, residents would have to stand not on the safe grass verge as they currently do, but if widened, they would have to stand on the road to cut their hedges. Standing on a live roadway to trim your hedges or even just stepping directly out onto the road from behind a hedge is not a good idea. We must also remember that regular trimming is needed to maintain the statutory road widths. This is a ridiculous and dangerous consequence of this applicant's flawed plan, a plan that might seem to fit on a piece of paper, but is hazardous in practice. I now move on to the street scene. Walking along Cocker Lane is a delight, and it is so beneficial to people's mental health. There is a sense of peace and tranquility. It offers so much pleasure for the thousands of people who walk through this beautiful lane every year. Walking eastwards from Birchwood, you meet a single-track lane flanked by tidy grass verges and a variety of lovely hedgerows. The applicant is seeking to remove the grass verges and severely cut back to the stumps, those are highways words, not minimal, stumps of the hedgerows. Wild birds would lose the nesting and protection capabilities of the hedges, which will lead to a decline in their number. Moreover, many of the hedges may well die because of root disturbance. This is due to the excavations for the foundations of the footpath and road widening proposals. The hedgerows under threat consist of beech, hawthorn, blackthorn and privet. Residents have loved and cared for the hedges for many years. It would be truly heartbreaking to watch the chainsaws savagely cutting them back to the stumps. Then followed by the diggers cutting through 50% of their lateral surface rooting network when no more than 20% is advisable. Remember, trees and hedges are surface rooting and ideally should not be interfered with at all. I will say directly to the councillors that I'm sure you did not come on this planning committee to vote for the destruction of residents' hedgerows. Consider the anger as well as the anguish that this application has caused within your community. In front of number 16 Cocker Lane is a group of healthy but unprotected roadside trees. Many will not survive the proposed widening of the lane. The loss of the field to any proposed development is devastating to the birds, mammals and insects that live there. Currently, there is excitement in the community as 2 buzzards are seen regularly encircling the field. Dusk is the time to stand at the field gate and wait for the owls to appear. The aerobatic displays of the bats too are a sight to behold. Why must the community lose this exceptional amenity and all for just 23 properties, a mere 0.3% of South Ribble's housing target, when there are dozens of less contentious sites readily available within the borough? I thank the committee members for listening to my submission. I remain confident that you as councillors have integrity and on behalf of your own credibility will say no to the devastation of Cocker Lane's field, hedgerows and trees. Over 300 years of history and street scenes are in your hands. Hold it lovingly and treasure it today and for future generations by rejecting this destructive and dangerous application. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Michael. Next up is Adrian Dean. Good evening, Adrian. If you press the speak button, you have 4 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for inviting me to speak. And my name is Adrian Dean, and I live at 10 Cocker Lane, Leyland. I am here to support the many hundreds of local residents who have objected to this planning application. I am a chartered civil engineer with 40 years' experience of highway design, traffic management and road safety. We are today considering the applicant's 7th iteration of his design of the access to this site via Cocker Lane. The original application was submitted in February 2024 15 months ago. South Ribble Borough Council has therefore breached the government's planning guarantee that no application should spend more than a year with decision makers, including any appeal. Why has South Ribble flagrantly disregarded government policy? Questions need to be asked as to why this applicant has been given such preferential assistance by officers far in excess of what is considered normal for a local planning authority. Why have council officers attempted to denigrate the efforts of Friends of Cocker Lane to establish the high level of opposition to this application? Road safety is fundamental to this application, so why have I received no reply to my email dated 25th of April inquiring about road safety audits? Despite all the amendments by the applicant, the latest design of Cocker Lane is still substandard and therefore unacceptable. For example, the carriageway and footway widths are well below national design standards and do not even comply with those of Lancashire County Council. What is the point of highway design standards if the local highway authority chooses to disregard its own standards? All future developers will soon catch on and demand that they too be allowed to submit substandard layouts and be given the same preferential treatment. The applicant has proposed a footway width of 1.8 metres on Cocker Lane, where pedestrian flows are high. Yet, 2 metres width within the site is proposed, where pedestrian flows are considerably lower. A width of 1.8 metres is not wide enough to safely accommodate the hundreds of school children that walk the lane every school day. The applicant has made a desperate attempt to squeeze the proposed layout between the hedges of properties lining this lane. The visibility displays for driveways are below standard and a safety risk. In the case of number 9 Cocker Lane, they are non-existent, even with the beautiful beech hedge cut back to the stumps. Lancashire County Council has bent its own highway standards in a weak attempt to favour the applicant. Now, piling was necessary for a recently constructed property on Cocker Lane near the site, so it is likely that the applicant has overlooked the risk that piling may be necessary. Those residents living close to the development served from Long Meanygate will all be well aware of the noise of piling, which can be nerve-shattering. For road safety reasons, on Cocker Lane, as stated above, this planning application must be refused. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks. Do we have Abigail Saunders this evening? Good evening.
The mic's still on, isn't it? Thank you. Thank you for your time. Good evening. My name is Abigail Saunders. I have lived on Cocker Lane, just opposite the proposed site entrance for the past 10 years, with my husband Adrian and 2 children, Evie, who is 13, and Will, who is 8. Both of our children have attended Moss Side Primary School. Will is still there. Evie is now at high school, and as a family, we use Cocker Lane multiple times a day to walk to and from school and for walking the family dog. Our daughter independently uses Cocker Lane twice a day to travel by foot to a local bus stop. As time has passed and more properties have appeared on Cocker Lane, the traffic has more than doubled in volume, as you yourselves have recognised. In the local plan, we are now at capacity. Even now, we met with an increasing number of delivery vans speeding down our lane each day, often travelling at excessive speeds. I regularly have to pull Will and the dog out of their way. Van drivers particularly don't realise the road bottlenecks just outside the proposed side entrance. And I also worry for the many children and young people walking or cycling up and down Cocker Lane. They often walk in lanes across the road with headphones in, looking down at their phones, not spotting the traffic coming up or in front of them or behind them. The situation at Moss Side Primary School is even more chaotic as there are cars literally abandoned everywhere at drop-off and pick-up times. I recently observed one Year 4 boy from my son's class run from the school gateway, cross Paradise Lane between cars without stopping or looking. He simply chanced his luck. When the new bus lane is officially opened on Paradise Lane and a bus is passing through with 2 or 3 construction vehicles thrown in the mix, plus the usual traffic, that same Year 4 boy running across the road will be at a higher risk. That is a matter of fact. For those councillors who are inexplicably considering approving this small, unneeded scheme, I want to remind you of the words of the headmaster at the school, Andrew Wright, who has already told you, and I quote, "As things stand, as I, Andrew, have previously highlighted, I think an accident could well happen within our current circumstances. If the traffic required for 5 years of construction and after that the traffic associated with 23 houses in terms of owners and services is then added, I can safely say that you would be creating a scenario where an accident is near certain to occur involving children either outside our school or on the roads close by." Andrew Wright does not live in this community. His only concern is the safeguarding of our children who attend his school, and it should be your concern too. Are you happy to roll the dice this evening with my child's life? Is this what planning consent has come down to in 2025? A child's life for some bricks and mortar. And that's not all. Our driveway leads out onto the turning circle on Cocker Lane, and my children step out directly onto that roadway every day. Something that I and members of the planning committee here tonight can appreciate. When I turned out of my drive onto the roadway on the 14th of May, I had to slow down because 2 of the planning committee members here today were walking towards me with a site plan in hand. I recognised them from the last meeting. They both had to promptly move out of the way to let me pass, and I drive an estate car, not a construction vehicle, but note they had to move out of the way. I drove up the lane, and as I looked back in my rearview mirror, I could only see 4 or 5 people. That does not seem like many of you attending at the same time. And why were the majority of you down Cocker Lane during school drop-off instead of being outside the school at school drop-off? The minutes you approved earlier this evening stated, with an amend, I quote, that the application be deferred to allow for a site visit to be arranged by committee members at school drop-off or pick-up time. But from what I observed, those visiting proceeded to attend just once in the morning only, went to the wrong area during the wrong time, and to top it off, the councillors who suggested it didn't even show up. Not only did the majority of the committee avoid visiting the school at the designating peak times, they turned up too late to count the 51 children who walked or biked past that morning. This was an incomplete, inappropriate and ineffective site visit. As a mum tonight, and I'm coming close to the end here, but let me finish, I'm on the last few lines. As a mum, I pleaded, and I'm pleading with you, with the councillors tonight, to do your job well this evening. You are elected to represent public interest, not to gamble on the lives of children and young people. I urge you as a distressed mum, you can see I'm distressed, sat in front of you tonight, to reject the applicant's plan this evening. Stop it now before it's too late. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thanks, Abigail. Do we have Brian Woodburn? Yeah, if you press the speak button, 4 minutes, Brian. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brian Woodburn. I live at 21 Cocker Lane, and I'm wondering why we're even here this evening. A planning application should be passed or declined within 16 weeks, and here we are, 70 weeks later, discussing the 7th set of plans that have been submitted by the applicant. And why? Because the other 6 were unacceptable in highways terms. The public highways around this site are already heavily congested, and increasing that congestion will unduly impact on the community of Cocker Lane, most of whom are elderly and vulnerable retirees. It's unconscionable that the council is putting these people through 5 years of heavy disruption for a contentious, unneeded and totally unsafe scheme, which barely fits the physical constraints that it's been shoehorned into. Approving this application means that extremely wide, heavy vehicles will be passing down our lane. The low loaders carrying the excavators and heavy earth moving equipment can be 2.8 metres wide. That's wider than the carriageway itself. And given the single point of entry and exit into Cocker Lane, tell me, how will these huge lorries find their way from Dunkirk Lane, down Paradise Lane, past Moss Side Primary School, into Cocker Lane itself during the construction phase? These local roads are just unsuitable for this sort of traffic. How are these vehicles expected to even turn around? It won't just be difficult for them, it'll be dangerous. And with no footpath and the lane narrowing into a single track, it will be near on impossible for large construction vehicles to even make their way to the proposed site. And that is before we consider the school children, recreational walkers, the cyclists, the vulnerable individuals with their carers, the horses, the dog walkers, and everyone else that uses the lane on a daily basis. This is a serious accident waiting to happen. Can you imagine what it must be like for all of our neighbours living with mud flying from those huge wheels into the gardens and hedges of the heavy construction traffic, which will be noisily rolling past their homes for the next 5 years? The construction traffic management plan on the portal is simply substandard. It addresses none of the issues that are clear to see: the unsuitability of the roads, the access, the school, congestion, disturbance, loading, dust, noise, or anything else for that matter. And just talking about the noise, the residents living near the test track development tell us that the noise from the piling machines has been an absolute nightmare. And given the tight confines of this proposed site and its proximity to other properties, this development will create much higher noise levels. How long has this process taken for the developers to bring this application to your committee? It has taken 70 weeks. 70 weeks, and we're likely to have another 30 weeks for the reserve matters. That's nearly 2 years, the same amount of time taken to approve the 950 properties at the test track, and all for one small, unneeded site of just 23 properties. Look around you. Look at the people who are here tonight. Look at the community that you represent and see how deeply they care about Cocker Lane and the surrounding areas. For the last 2 years, you will have dragged them through multiple sets of proposals, discrediting a perfectly well-organised petition signed by over 2,800 people and rejecting all their planning portal comments made during this long and drawn-out process. Ask yourselves, why is this taking so long? Why are we on the 7th Amendment to the application? It's because the access to the proposed site is unsafe and Cocker Lane is already at capacity. You've said it yourselves, councillors. Show this community here tonight that public opinion, public safety and due process really does matter to this committee, and dismiss this application out of hand. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Do we have a Stuart Buchanan?
The button. Good evening. My name's Stuart Buchanan. I reside at 1 Gillyflower Court with my family. My property boundary runs directly alongside Cocker Lane. It seems odd to me that the applicant has had 70 weeks and multiple swings of the bat to get here. LCC Highways' response is far from satisfied with the resultant plan, although it's been shoehorned in the literal and physical sense to satisfy the absolute minimum of highway planning. However, they're nowhere near happy. I live here and get 4 minutes and a red button to talk about the application, not 70 weeks. This plan will be detrimental to me and my family for many years to come. This application should have been dismissed after 16 weeks. The fact that some councillors here are in favour of an application for which there isn't a single compelling reason, it's a windfall site. It's already been permanently discounted by LCC Highways on access and safety grounds and is not needed for development targets. The application has been played with admin and process problems, in my opinion. The first was initially flagged by me, who isn't a specialist in planning law, nor do I work in the field in question. However, I could spot a very obvious flaw that the original application was put forward by a pensions trust, BWSIP, and done so with an incorrect Type A ownership certificate, which a trustee is unable to use. Unbelievably, the trustee even left comments that they knew nothing of the application on the planning portal. In turn, after raising this to the planning team, both the applicant and the ownership certificate was changed by amendment. The accuracy of this application has already been demonstrated to be flawed. Regardless of the outcome here tonight, I hope the planning team responsible for overseeing this application, who are giving the priority to the development of this site over the community, who are out here in force telling you that this is wrong. Again, I do hope the planning team is prepared for the ongoing scrutiny that this process will receive, especially as public notices were not amended with the change of applicant. The planning department has ignored requests for information. They now continue to discredit perfectly well-organised online petition with change.org, for which they have been informed and can access directly if they so choose. And they've discredited the public comments on their planning portal that was provided for this purpose. I'd like to thank Phil Smith for raising the issues with a site visit, so I won't go into too much details. However, what I will say is that one of our residents provided photographic evidence of 120 school-aged children walking past the site on the day the council visited Cocker Lane. I'm surprised that's not in the planning report. I am surprised also that you're saying that school children should not be there. From a safety point of view, cyclists are absolutely at risk from this proposal going forward. I rewatched the planning meeting from the last time, and I was struck by the valid reasons presented here by the community and the lack of reasons for the application to be granted. I won't cover too much the words of the headmaster. He's already said, an accident is likely to happen. The members of this committee should have seen the issues with access past the school. And lastly, I would posit that the Ackland family have owned this land in question for centuries, of which the two applicants, Lisa Victoria St Clair Ackland Redshaw and Jane Charlotte Ann Ackland Bamford, are part of this historic family. They should respect the wishes of the community, who have shown that they are deeply concerned with the actions of the planning department and should be prepared to wait, as they've done for centuries, until an opportunity arises over time to make this access to the site safe. This is not the opportunity, and this is not safe. This is why this should be refused. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Stuart. Before I bring your ward councillor in, Councillor Green, would you like to address anything? Is it no, nothing? Okay, Councillor Michael Green. Good evening, Councillor. 4 minutes, okay?
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, colleagues. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. Can I first of all thank everybody for attending this evening. Once again, a massive turnout from the Cocker Lane community, which shows the strength of feeling against this inappropriate application. Can I particularly thank the speakers? And I noticed we had some changes of speakers this evening, and it's difficult. Some people can't be here because of the timing of this meeting during school holiday periods, etc. But thank you everybody for coming. Chairman, I'm the Borough Councillor for the area. I've represented residents on Cocker Lane for 16 years, so I know the area well. The area is now shared between Moss Side Ward and Earnshaw Bridge Ward on the other side of the road. Cocker Lane is a very narrow, rural, single track for 50% of its length from Birchwood down to the proposed access to this development. It is frequented by all age groups, young children, teenagers, adults, people with physical disabilities, people with mental disabilities, and older residents. And it's an area where people tend to live when they are getting more advanced in age. The application has taken, as you have heard, some 70 weeks to come to the planning committee, and there's very good reason for this. The site was considered during the local plan process and was rejected for 3 reasons: safety, no direct access, and Cocker Lane is already at capacity and is saturated. 2 of these have not been addressed and have not been resolved. Different sets of proposals have come forward, and it was on, I think, the 5th or 6th iteration of these that finally LCC said that what was on the table might be acceptable. But none of these previous have been acceptable and were rejected by LCC Highways on highway safety grounds on every occasion. The final submission, which was effectively shoehorns the scheme into the locality as tightly as you could possibly imagine. As the Highways Officer noted, and you'll see that report in your pack or online, this can only be achieved by severely cutting back the edges back to the highway boundary, and this will be right up to the stump. Our residents carry out other maintenance without being at risk. Councillor Pillinger at the last meeting said that the edges will continue to grow by 1 foot per year. 1 foot per year. So you're expecting older residents to stand in the highway and cut back those edges. I don't think that's safe. What will happen to the bins when they're collected each week? A number of ways in which the proposal is not compliant have been set out by Mr Dean earlier, and I would refer you to his very well-informed comments of somebody with significant experience in that area. Widening the road will also increase speeds to the detriment of highway safety. I do not accept that it will be safe in highways terms, and I'm concerned to note that highway safety audits are being requested and have not been provided. As colleagues on this committee, I hope you have seen those audits, because otherwise some liability will fall on yourselves individually, which I don't think is fair. Those need to be provided to members. Further, I would raise the impact of the proposed access upon residential amenity of neighbours, and I refer to my comments which I made at the last meeting, when you turn down a similar application of Fossdale Moss. Despite no objection from LCC Highways, the application went to appeal and the inspector upheld the decision taken by this committee. I would also remind colleagues that it would take 5 years of movement of construction vehicles, which further impacts upon residents. This community, Mr Chairman, cares deeply about the safety of everyone using Cocker Lane. But I'm sorry to say, and I say this as a proud South Ribble member, I'm sorry to say that they feel that the council is not listening to them in a balanced manner. The council has discredited the petition which has been set out this evening from hundreds of people that filled that in. And I have to say, the site visit, the very reason why we are here this evening, has not filled anyone with confidence. That site visit was proposed by your colleague, Councillor Pillinger. Councillor Pillinger set out in his proposal that the site visit must take place at 10 to 3 on a school day afternoon. What happened? Because it did not take place at that time. Clearly inappropriate. Evidence has been presented of 120 children that passed on the day when the site visit took place. But this committee apparently didn't see any. Why? Because the children were already in Moss Side County Primary School. They were already in high schools in Leyland when they walk along Cocker Lane to get to those, because it was the wrong time for the visit. And many of you didn't have the opportunity to take part in that site visit. And yourself, Mr Chairman, made it very clear that you wanted 2 site visits to take place, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and that all councillors should attend that site visit to make sure they have seen the lane before making a decision. Colleagues, in my years as a councillor, many years now, this is probably, as I said at the last meeting, probably the most inappropriate application I've perhaps ever seen in the Moss Side ward. I would urge you to consider the safety of the residents that we are all elected to serve, to consider the impact upon the residential amenity of the residents in Moss Side and Earnshaw Bridge wards and beyond, to consider the environment, which we all believe in as councillors at South Ribble, protecting the environment, ensuring that biodiversity is promoted at all opportunities. Well, it's time to put into practice what we preach as councillors. Let's look at the logos. Progress with humanity above your head. One behind us, for you and for your community. Let's be true to those words. There is no need for this application, Mr. Chairman, and I would urge the committee to reject this application. Thank you for your time.
Okay, have we got the applicant's agent, Chris Betteridge, with us this evening? Yeah, just bear with me a minute. Okay, Chris, you have 4 minutes, okay?
Thank you, Chair. My name's Chris Betteridge. I'm from DePaul Associates, acting on behalf of the applicant in respect to this application. Just want to say a few words and I'll hand over to Mark Devlish, who's the highways consultant, who can perhaps explain things on highways in a bit more detail than I can. I speak in support of the officer recommendation to approve this application, subject to entering into a Section 106 agreement for reasons set out in the report. To reiterate, there are no objections from statutory consultees and the proposals are in accordance with the adopted and emerging development plan. with the provisions of the National Planning Policy Framework. Furthermore, there are no material considerations which would outweigh the need to accord with the development plan. This includes the ecology, which was assessed by the council's advisors and raised no objections subject to conditions. Members who attended the site visit a couple of weeks ago will have had the opportunity to familiarise themselves with the site and its surroundings. It will have been noted that Cocker Lane is a residential road with housing on both sides and further housing in the immediate area. The application proposal incorporates a number of improvements to Cocker Lane, and I'm aware that those on the site visit took time, led by officers, to review and understand the works proposed, which will enhance the lane and provide a safer route for all users, not just those of the proposed development. Mention has been made of pedestrians currently using the Cocker Lane carriageway to move from Schleiswig Way to Paradise Lane and vice versa. The proposed improvements will introduce a dedicated footway for pedestrians, providing a safer route for all road users, including school children who currently have no choice but to walk in the road. I think the existing issues relating to highway without a footpath have already been highlighted by residents today. The proposal has been subject to extensive consultation with planning officers and the Highways Authority to deliver a scheme which is acceptable and meets necessary requirements. I'll finalise by saying the application should be determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. As identified by the planning officers in their report, the application is fully in accordance with the development plan. It accords with the emerging development plan. It accords with the National Planning Policy Framework. There are no objections from statutory consultees, and there are no material considerations as a result which would outweigh the need to determine this application in accordance with that development plan. I'd like to introduce you to Mark Devilish, from SCP, who's going to talk about the highways matters on the lane. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Mark Devonish, Highways Consultant. Once again, you have 4 minutes, okay?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Committee. I'm Mark Devonish from SCP Transport, with the applicant's Highways Consultant. I'm a Chartered Engineer and Fellow of the Chartered Institute of Highways and Transportation. And for those not at the previous committee, the access strategy for the site has been discussed in detail since the application was submitted, and agreed with the local highway authority that access is safe and suitable in accordance with the National Planning Policy Framework. And the subject of a lot of the discussions is the highway improvement scheme proposed to the section of Cocker Lane between Birchwood and the site, which as existing is not wide enough for 2 vehicles to pass and does not have any footway provision for pedestrians. As the objectives have noted, there are many already using the lane, including school children, and the proposed improvement scheme, which will provide localised carriageway widening to allow 2 vehicles to pass along sections of Cocker Lane, provide a continuous footway between Birchwood and the site, will provide a significant benefit and would directly address the concerns raised regarding the width of Cocker Lane and use by pedestrians who currently have to share the carriageway with vehicles. The Highway Authority have placed a great deal of scrutiny on the design for the scheme and requested a much more detailed design than would generally be required. This is to ensure the scheme is right without detriment to the existing properties and users of Cocker Lane, and it is normal for several revisions of a scheme to be submitted, which is preferable than a first draft being approved without due consideration. The scheme, as noted by officers, the scheme will be provided entirely within the adopted highway and will not affect any land beyond this. Any hedgerow affected is within the highway and could be cut back at any time for the benefit of highway safety, regardless of this application. The scheme has included a road safety audit, which raised no concerns with the scheme and has been submitted as part of the application. This has allowed officers to conclude that the proposals were acceptable in accordance with the National Planning Policy Framework. The site visit was arranged to allow conditions to be observed during the school opening and closing. The school is some 500 metres from the application site. It's noted that Cocker Lane is already a pedestrian route.
Excuse me. Carry on.
And the provision of a footway where children are forced to currently share the carriageway is therefore a significant benefit. With regard to the school itself, the traffic around drop-off and pick-up times is an inevitable occurrence encountered at the majority of primary schools, and is a period of activity over a short spell, typically lasting around 15 minutes. This is an existing situation, is not something that's been introduced by the application proposals. The peak period for traffic generation would not coincide with the afternoon pickup, but would coincide with the morning pickup. And during that period of activity before school opening could be expected to generate 2 to 3 vehicle movements, which is dwarfed by existing activity at the school. Members will be aware that the National Planning Policy Framework is clear that applications should only be refused on highway grounds where impacts are severe. It is further clear that 2 to 3 movements past the school these times could not be considered as severe, nor could the number of movements generated as a whole. So this would therefore not substantiate a reason for refusal, and we ask that this is given due regard in the decision being made. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Right, you didn't register to speak. If you wanted to, you could have done, but you didn't. So I don't want shouting from the floor. Thanks. Right, that's everyone now. So I am going to bring this application into committee. Councillor Turner, welcome.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask the planning officer, I've just got 2 questions for clarification, really. Councillor Green mentioned about highway safety audits being done. I'm not sure is that something that LCC should have done and haven't done? Or are you talking about the safety audits as part of the developers' consultations?
Through the chair, councillor. Highway safety audit is done by the applicant's transport consultant, and the results of that will factor into drawings, proposals, and the future scheme, which is assessed then by Lancashire County Council's Highways Authority. The highways audit was provided to Councillor Green this afternoon, but it forms part of the evidence for the proposal to come forward, and it's the proposal that Highways Authority have looked at, the plans, the technical aspect of that scheme.
Chair, I just had another point. Sorry, I'm new to this. I just want to double check. So there are independent highway safety audits done by the applicant. Well, okay, and then LCC, do they review them and say, yeah, we accept those, or we have the points to make?
They can do, but generally the highway safety audit will inform the rest of the proposal. So the findings of that will be used by the applicant and his transport and his architects to put together a scheme. The Highways Authority may have asked to look at that, they may not, but they will be looking at the final drawings for the scheme and the final proposals.
Thank you, Chair. Just the other question. So yeah, I recognise this is an outline planning application. But, I mean, I'm concerned by quite a few of the issues that the residents have brought up. Unfortunately, some of them aren't material planning considerations. I realise that. However, there is one thing that I'm really concerned about. Can you please clarify the carriageway widening? Are we saying that there are still having to be passing points on there because 2 vehicles can't pass? Thank you.
Can I defer to Mark on this bit, Mark?
Back to the passing points. Is it true that there are passing points on that restructured highway? Yeah, I know. I'm just checking.
Yeah, no.
Is it true?
Yeah, Councillor Turner, if you just wait 1 minute, Debbie's going to go back to the drawing that we were showing earlier which identifies the highway realignment works that would need to take place. I know it's unfortunate that the site visit was conducted before you were on committee, but we took members out to site, we walked up the lane and we highlighted the improvements that were being proposed to the lane in terms of areas of widening and passing places where the pedestrian footway will go. But Debbie will respond on the plan.
You can't. I'm sorry, the cursor on here isn't showing, but towards the top left hand, you'll see a wide blue line from west to east. That's the passing place. Let me see if I can. Yeah, hang on. The passing place proposed here should allow the carriageway to be wide enough to allow two vehicles to pass. And carriageway widening here. So, yeah.
Residents, the deal had been denied, they have to stand in that passing place because they're
Sorry. So just to be absolutely clear then, finally, so there are places on the proposed reconstruction widening of the road where you still have places where there'll be passing points because it's not wide enough for two cars.
Yeah.
See, I really struggle with that. Okay.
I think the scheme has had to take into account the existing properties, the existing land ownership, and the like. And as I said earlier, sorry, this keeps sticking. All of the work on the proposal, as you can see, is within the adopted highway, but there are restrictions because there is established land ownership beyond that.
Sorry, yeah, I understand that, Debbie. They are the facts of the matter. However, I do struggle with a road going into a residential area or being in a residential area where there are passing points and we've got this traffic of children. But that's clarified that for me, so I understand the reasons why. And just so people know, I was actually brought up in Leyland, so I do know Cocker Lane quite well because even when I was at primary school, which is several decades ago, one of my school friends was fortunate enough to have a horse stable down there. I did go to Cocker Lane last week. I did have to move in to the side to let speeding vans pass. So I am, my biggest concern is the traffic there and these passing points. Okay, thank you for answering those questions.
Just through you, Chair, I think the whole premise of this scheme is that yes, the road at the moment isn't acceptable. It's badly made. It has no passing points. It has no pavement. This scheme has been put together and will combat the vast majority of those issues. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Gabbert.
Thanks, Chair. It's one of them where I completely agree with what Councillor Turner's just said. And that I do dislike schemes like this. I've seen them before, and others that have been rejected, been appealed, and they've won. Others with a lot more homes than this one has. I just can't, and this is the thing that's getting me, is a valid legal planning reason to object on highway safety grounds, because at the moment, and former County Councillor Green, when he was speaking, said it perfectly. He said, this has been going 5, 6, 7 iterations. He went, but it's got to the point where LCC have had to say yes because it meets requirements. Now, we're at the point where the planning officers are going, it meets requirements with NPPF. It meets that framework, which is a tick box exercise, which bigger developers do, etc. And it drives me insane that they can do that way, but it's how it works. But then also highway safety, which is what the vast majority of everyone here, you are the local community. I'm not disagreeing with what anyone's saying. Completely agree. The kids crossing, the lack of areas for cyclists, as someone was saying before when highways person for the agent was speaking. But LCC are the statutory consultee, who are the highways experts, who even with everything have said, yeah, it's fine. If it wasn't fine, LCC should have had no problem in saying for the 7th time, we can't support the scheme. That's the bit that gets me. If there's a bit where we have a valid legal reason to object on highway safety grounds, I'll object, because I think the highway safety is terrible. But until that point, I can't object to it, because it'll just be appealed, because day one tomorrow, the applicant's just going to go with a piece of paper from LCC, send it to the planning inspectorate, and that's more than likely what they're going to go with. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks. I'm open to committee now. I'm sorry, sir. Okay, Councillor Stringfellow.
I made 3 visits down to Cocker Lane in the past couple of weeks. The first one, which somebody complained about, was the wrong time. I was there quite early, actually, a lot earlier than anybody, well, almost everybody else. But I went back twice afterwards at different times just to get a proper feel of how busy it was. And yeah, there's loads of children going down towards Schleswig Way, walking down there, like you say, with the headphones on and, on the phones like they all do now. And they're not paying a lot of attention to the traffic. And I found it very difficult when I tried to get back out onto Paradise Lane, but coming up Cocker Lane on the narrower bit, and that the children are in the middle of the road and they don't want to move to one side because they're going onto a grass verge. And all I could think was how much better it would be if there was a pathway there, and a pathway that was continuous. Can I finish? A pathway that was, that continuous with the one that is already existing down there. And to me, that pathway is creating a much safer space than what is there existing at the moment. And that's all I would like to say at the moment on the matter.
There's always one. If it carries on, I will clear the room. You've had fair warning, and I'm not going to say it again. Councillor Williams.
Right. I live very, very close to this site, probably within a couple of 100 yards of it. I'm going to say a few things now, which may sound contentious, but I will be allowed to speak. Now, there are a couple of things apart. The first issue I'll look at is the actual issue of houses. This is a built-up area that's currently got a set of houses that have been built out of various different styles and various different bits and pieces over the years. So the actual housing use of the site, even though we're not got a plan of it, which is technically sort of irrelevant at the minute, I have got no issue with. The second bit of it is the fact that a footpath would be created, which people would walk down, for want of a better expression, is betterment. But the other bit that concerns me about the fact that we're saying they're about a safe route to school is those walking from the Moss Side area to go to Worden High School have to cross that bypass. Now, that bypass is not safe for a lot of people. There is no crossing on it. So the fact that people are using that route to school and it's a safe route to school, it's sort of mitigated by the fact that there's a bypass there. Okay. Now, the bit I can't wrap in my own head is, I go up this lane quite regularly to visit family, is the fact that it's an adopted highway. Part of it is an adopted highway. There's grass verges on either side. Now, from what the planning, what Debbie has said, the situation with adopted highway is completely different from what planning permission is. If I was to build an extension, it's been there for 10 years, never got planning permission, and I were to apply for it afterwards, I would get it because it's been there long enough. Effectively, for what Debbie has said, and I asked this question when we did the site visit, the adopted highway remains the adopted highway, no matter after how long. The highways can come back to it and do whatever they want with it. So effectively, these grass verges and these hedges have been maintained down this lane for decades by the local residents. And the grass verges and grass strips have been used for decades. They've been some people, the hedges have encroached into it. In one case, down the bottom, there's a planter that's now suddenly illegal against the garden wall. Now, had LCC because this is adopted, in theory, LCC should have been maintaining this for the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years. But they haven't been anywhere near it. Now, had they been anywhere near it, they were discovered at a planter, had been sat there in the highway for the last 20 years and said, hang on a minute, this shouldn't be there, let's do something about it. So, effectively, this scheme has been shoehorned into it. Now, arguing with this scheme, saying it's safe or not safe, is really, really difficult because, as Councillor Gabbert has said, LCC are the specialists. If anyone was to blame for all this, it's LCC, not us. We're having to make this decision. We're having to make the ultimate decision tonight, but LCC are to blame for the iterations of doing this, and I firmly believe that. Now, trying to disprove whether this is safe or unsafe is going to be extremely difficult. So the only way of getting this refused is finding a legal way to getting this refused is basically on a couple of criteria. There's a couple within our G70 and I could refer to, but I'm still unsure as whether it's a strong enough argument as to whether it's strong enough that they would actually fly if somebody was to appeal. That is my conundrum at the minute, but I'm interested to see what other people have got to say before I propose anything. I will hold my counsel for now. Because I've proposed stuff before and got bitten, so I'm going to listen to what other people say first. But as regards road safety, I cycle along this lane quite regularly, and I can't see in a 5.5 metre wide roadway. They're supposed to get 2 vehicles on it. I was a bin lorry and a transit van supposed to pass each other, and it just bloody can't. My French. So.
Very popular this evening, Councillor Williams. Councillor Mrs. Green.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank all the residents for coming. It's always helpful when you hear the local opinions of people, because let's face it, they've to live with whatever before or after the application. And thank you to the officers for all the work that they've done, and for turning up at the site visit and spending the time down there with plans and answering many of the probing questions that we asked. I mean, I asked quite a few probing questions, but that's what we go on the site visit for. If it's just to think about it, I wouldn't have needed to go because I know the area quite well. But it was very useful because I asked quite a few probing questions. As I've said, we had the meeting last time. I listened to everyone. It's quite conclusive, everybody's feelings about this. And we went on to vote and decided to defer it on further information that we might receive. We went on the site visit, very informative, like I say. It did open up a lot of issues that you wouldn't have known about if you didn't go on it. And I've read the report again, I've come tonight, I've listened to everyone tonight. And I can't thank everyone enough for coming and speaking. It's not easy to speak in a public meeting. But to be quite honest, I've not heard anything tonight that we didn't hear last time. I've not seen anything that's sort of added to the fact of having this application be more acceptable. In fact, the things that I saw the other day and heard this evening have made it more difficult, I think. I think it's worse. The application is worse. We were pointed out on the site visit that to widen the road to enable the traffic flow, considerable cutback of the hedges to the stems, removal of the grass verges would all have to be executed to get the width on the road that LCC think is the correct width. The objections really on highway capacity and impact on the natural environment, because we've heard this evening how much of the natural environment will be absolutely decimated and destroyed. There will be definitely loss of amenity for people living down there. This impact of this development is going to absolutely change the ethos of that lane, because although there are mixed properties, size-wise, style-wise, etc., there's no sort of, shall we say, estate feeling of properties down there. They're mostly individual properties. And this will change with this development. The putting in of the pavement to some extent will help, but the pavement's only going to be 1.8 metre wide. It's not the full width that it should be, although I believe I was told that you've got pavements of that width in other parts of the borough. But the point is to cut back hedges to enable that footpath to be put in, and it's going to only be 1.8. Hedges grow, and some of the hedges grow very quickly. And once those hedges start to grow, that 1.8 metre wide becomes a metre or even less than a metre, depending on how big a hedge and how quick it grows. In which case then you're going to have pedestrians with pushchairs, prams, dogs, carers taking disabled people out, not being able to walk on that pavement because it won't be wide enough. People in wheelchairs and children in pushchairs or pram will literally have a hedge across their face. So they won't be able to use that pavement. So therefore what is going to happen, people are going to be walking in the road again. To get out of the way of the hedge, they're going to be walking in the road. I know it happens near where I live. Sometimes the pavement, depending on the time of year, you can't walk down the pavement, you've got to walk in the road. The passing place is a concern. Thinking about the traffic that's coming in and out of that road in the morning and evening, especially when people are coming home from work, etc. The passing place is going to stop one flow of traffic going through because they're going to have to give way for the other side to come through. Therefore, it's going to cause, if there's a lot of traffic, a backlog of traffic. It's going to back up to the access of the development. You've got cars backed up, cars manoeuvring, people impatient wanting to get through in the morning, getting to work, getting children to school. And in the middle of all this, you've got children walking through, people with dogs, taking the dogs for a walk before they go to work. It's going to be absolute chaos down there. Like it's already been said, you're going to have to stand in the road to trim your hedges. And the people down there, residents down there, are very proud of their properties. They maintain their properties well. So they're going to want to keep the hedges and things tidy. Are they going to be standing in the road to do that? This is what you're forcing them to do by allowing this development. I've got down here. Put that down, yeah, put that down. That's really everything I want to say. I agree with Councillor Williams that it's, in my opinion, it contravenes G17. And I'm not happy with this application whatsoever. And I think we've considered it long enough, and I think the residents have been held in abeyance long enough, and they need to get their lives sorted now and settled one way or another. So if I can leave it at that, thank you.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Was that a proposal? No, okay, I'll fetch Councillor Smith in.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Well, I'll put you out of your misery, Mary, and I will propose refusal of this application. And I will go on to say why. I mean, I visited the site on 3 occasions, once before the application, the second one, which was, I won't go into detail, but of which was arranged by the council, and I went again yesterday just to reaffirm, I suppose, my thoughts with regard to this application. And each time that I went, really what it did was confirm what I'd read, what I'd heard, and what I thought of my own views with regard to this. And a bit like Councillor Michael Green when he said he's never seen such a poor application in Moss Side area. I don't think I have either. It's one of the worst applications I've seen in South Ribble, to be quite honest. It really is. It's really bad. And we sort of get hamstruck with regard to what the Highways Authority say. We're told that we can't object to it. Well, we can if we want to. Somebody will have to prove it at some stage, and it might be in a courtroom, but nevertheless, that might have to happen. A planning inspector might take a different view of it. Well, again, that might happen and it might go to a courtroom. But nevertheless, we need to stand by what we think and what we think is right and what we think is correct, and with some reasoning for our decisions. Highway safety is quite clearly a problem. It's not a problem now. There's been no accident reported down there. The residents that live there, the few that live down there, drive up and down that lane, they're all taking care of each other, not to run the children over. I have to say, yesterday I nearly got run over myself, but it was a lycra-clad cyclist herring down the lane like I don't know what. There was nowhere to go.
Maybe he recognised you.
Yeah. I have seen Councillor Williams in his, well, not in his lycra, but on his bike, but there we are. Not a pretty sight, I believe, yeah. Anyway, so highways is an issue for me, and basically we're told that we really can't reject it on the safety value. I don't believe that is correct, and somebody can say, well, that is, but the residential amenity with regard to the extra traffic, the extra noise, the general traffic noise is substantial. There are more cars going up and down there, or will be 23 cars. Tell me who doesn't have 2 cars in the family. That's 46 cars that will be several times a day. The traffic movement on that lane will be substantial. And I suppose you could say on that basis, the risk of an accident could be substantial. I'm not clever enough to have drawn up that and look at the information behind it, but it sounds substantial. When you more than doubling or tripling the traffic, it is substantial. It's already been pointed out that the road isn't wide enough. There are passing places there. Well, it shouldn't need passing places. It's got to, because of the way that the road is constructed. I made some points at the last meeting, and those points, if we want to dig them out at some stage, still stand for me. I've not seen anything that would change my mind at all. All I've seen is items on the agenda, listening to councillors around the table, listening to representations has probably strengthened what I felt in the first place. And I feel very strongly about the ripping up of the grass verges, the trees, the bushes, and I made a comment last time about, I'm not sure exactly about the words, but I'll say similar words, I think, about the destroying of the green, unique environment of Cocker Lane. And it's one of those lanes in South Ribble we should be protecting, not building on. There aren't many of them left. There's quite a lot. There's quite a lot of these lanes that I pointed out at last meeting been destroyed by planning applications, by over-proliferation of housing. And to be quite honest, as I say, we should be looking after it. And I'm sure the planning officers come up with various reasons within G7 or whatever they might choose to put down. On what strength they want to put down on the information that I'm putting forward. So I think I'll leave it at that, Chairman, and wait for somebody to second it.
Yeah, you mean G17?
G17. Yeah, G17.
I've got Councillor Mrs Green and then Councillor Peter Molyneux.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just be brief. I'd like to second the proposal for refusal.
So I've got Councillor Molyneux and then Councillor Angela Turner. Pardon? Oh, okay. Councillor Mulliner.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Could I just get this straight? Did Councillor Smith propose?
Councillor Smith proposed, Councillor Mrs Greens seconded.
And that's been seconded. Thank you. For me, this is a dangerous application. I think there's a lot that we have to consider. The carriages and the footways seem to be below standard. You know, to me, if it's almost like they've had attempts to just squeeze things in, make things work for the sake of getting that application through. 23 houses, you know, again, that's just going to add to congestion in the area of Cocker Lane. 6 or 7 times this application has been put forward, you know, which suggests to me that this application has got problems. And I'm not confident that this application should go forward this evening. Residential amenities will definitely be affected with an extra 23 houses. You're going to get maybe at least 1-2 cars, 50 other. You could have 50 cars going up and down the lane, which are not doing that at the moment. You've got the passing points. They'll slow down the traffic, and if you get more traffic coming on there, they're just going to be backed up. It's going to be worse than ever. And in my view, this application is not fit for purpose. I said at the last planning meeting, that I didn't see the need to have another site visit. I was quite confident at the time that it wasn't right. And after going again, I'm still of that opinion. So I agree tonight, and I'll be voting against it. Thank you.
Oh,
yes.
I'm just asking, would you like to say? Thanks, Catherine. Go on.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so I've heard various suggestions regarding reasons for refusal or potential reasons for refusal, and they are quite widespread in the things that have been mentioned between Councillor Smith and Councillor Green. And obviously Councillor Smith moved a recommendation for refusal, but also touched on a number of matters. Some relating to residential amenity and the impact of noise and disturbance from people moving up and down the lane from the proposed development. Some relating to the potential for accidents on the lane or highway safety. And some that really related to the environment and character of Cocker Lane and the impact that the development would result in relation to removal of potentially verges, hedges and the loss of green space. And I'm hoping, Councillor Smith, that's captured the things that you referred to. Is that correct before I just move on?
Yes, Kath, that is correct. I mean, it's been a busy meeting with a lot of people speaking. I've got pages and pages of notes here, and I could come up with a lot more, to be quite honest, but that will set the ball rolling. Thank you.
So thank you for that. So just in relation to those matters, some of those matters would be more challenging for members to defend at appeal if they chose to use these as reasons for refusal. So, for example, matters that relate to highway safety would be challenging for the committee to do, or for the local authority to defend a reason for refusal on those grounds, given that the Highway Authority do not concur with that view. And they obviously have advised the council that the scheme as presented now, albeit that there have been various iterations to get to this point, is acceptable and will not result in harm to highway safety. So I just want to make that point to members, that would be difficult potentially to defend if we were to use those reasons for refusal. Similarly, in terms of impact on residential amenity, again, we would have to substantiate that. And given that the properties on the lane are set back, most of them have a front garden, none of them would be in immediate proximity to the 219 and 21 would not be in immediate proximity to the entrance. And we could ensure through a subsequent reserved matters application that they were set properly away from those properties to meet the council's distance standards. Again, that might be challenging to defend a reason for refusal based on those grounds. However, were members to be express concern largely about something that is more subjective in terms of perhaps the harm that would be created through the loss of to the harm to character and visual amenity of Cocker Lane that would be created through the loss of the green space, the highway verges and hedgerows, and that was contrary to G17 in the in the local plan. And there is a relevant policy in the NPPF about ensuring that developments sit within the character of the area. I think that's paragraph 135. It might be that sort of reason for refusal would be easier for members to defend, or for the council to defend at appeal. I think hopefully that's helpful, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Catherine. So you can put your hand down. We've finished representations. We're opening committee now. Okay. Do we have any more proposals apart from refusal? No. No more proposals. So you're going for refusal of the application on grounds of G17?
If council's committee is agreeable, I would suggest something along the lines that the proposed development would be detrimental to the character and visual amenity of Cocker Lane through the loss of the open green space, the highway verges, the hedgerows, and that would be contrary to the council's policies and the relevant policy in the NPPF. What I would suggest, Chair, is that the exact wording we give is agreed between the head of planning and enforcement and the chair, but it would be along those grounds.
Could you include the proposer in that?
Sorry.
Could you include the proposer in what you're saying with the chair and yourself? Could you include the proposer in?
No, it's not. It's not the done thing. Councillor Mrs. Green.
I'm only asking.
Yeah, could loss of biodiversity and thing might strengthen it as well, because there's massive biodiversity affected, isn't there? If the hedgerows are removed and the field is built on, and it's massive effect to the biodiversity, isn't it?
Yeah, again, through you, Chair, we have to be quite careful about the reasons for refusal, because we obviously have consulted the council's ecology advisors at the Greater Manchester Ecology Unit with regard to the scheme, and they haven't raised any objections because there would be compensation planting agreed as part of any reserved matters proposal. And there are conditions proposed that would allow that.
But with respect, there's no comparison of a few bits of landscaping on an estate compared with the natural environment what there is at the moment.
But the thing is, the scheme that comes forward could include replacement hedgerow planting. You know, we don't know because this is the outline application. But what I would say is, where we have consulted a statutory advisor or ecology advisor, and they have responded and not raised objections, it would be difficult to use that as a reason for refusal. But I do think it would be, you know, the loss of those features would be covered in the sort of suggested.
And also, Catherine, you know, the fact that you've said that they've all got gardens and the setback, but it's changing the ethos of the community, isn't it? That's a big thing when you say amenity. It's not just the other points of amenity. Amenity is also when you're changing the feel, the actual feeling of the surroundings for the people who live there. It's going to be changed into a more residential area rather than a rural area.
Councillor Green, can you? It's not a personal conversation. This is the planning committee now. Sorry, Councillor Green. This is and we have had a proposal that's been seconded by yourself.
Yeah, that's correct.
Councillor Mullino's tending to agree with it.
I was just trying to
need to actually drag this meeting out any longer than we need to.
No, but the officer was validly raising points, weren't you, to find reasons for refusal, and I was just trying to input some reason.
Okay, right.
I was trying to assist the officer.
Can you tie up, please?
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Green. Every respect for you, but there's no need. Right. So we've had a proposal for refusal, seconded by, which is Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Mary Green. We haven't got another proposal. So we're going to be voting for refusal on grounds of
I think we would like, I will make it clear, but the exact wording would, I think, need to be discussed between Lizzie and yourself.
Fine.
It's obviously, it's hard to come up with the exact wording in the meeting.
Okay.
Something along the lines of that the proposed development would be detrimental to the character and visual amenity of Cocker Lane, which I think was the point you were making, Councillor Green, through loss of open green space, highway verges and hedgerows, and then contrary to the relevant policies, for example, G17.
I agree, Kath.
Okay. Right, so we're going to go to the vote then, because we don't have another proposal. This is for refusal. I hope nobody's going to shout at us for going to the vote for refusal. No? Right, okay. So let's go to the vote to refuse this application.
Thank you, Chair. Members have voted to refuse the application on grounds of damage to visual amenity of Cocker Lane.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of this part of the planning applications tonight. Please, could you leave in a good manner, because we do have neighbours. All right, thanks very much. Yeah, okay. All members of committee, we're going to have a 5-minute recess while the chamber's emptied. Thank you. Right, ladies and gentlemen, if you were here for the previous application, can you clear the room, please? Thank you. We're okay to start with that, Alex, aren't we? He's eating cake again. Right, let's move on to item number 7, which is a retrospective planning application at Green Acres, Chainhouse Lane, Whitestate. Catherine, if you would like to present this item.
Let the plans load.
Shared.
Deb, you let me down with the technology.
I've shared it, honestly.
Oh dear. Oh, we're here. Oh no, not quite.
Sticking. These phones where I need to be.
Well, I think, members, the easiest thing is for me just to make a start, and I'll talk you through it. And if the pictures come back on, then I'll show you what's.
I thoroughly agree.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So basically, this is a retrospective application for a stable block. The siting is to the rear of land to the rear of 57 Chainhouse Lane. The stable block itself, as you can see from the plan, is situated quite to the south, away from Chainhouse Lane. To the north is some new residential development that is been granted, and there are ongoing works on that site. But the stable block itself is in position. It measures about 18.6 metres wide by 4.2 metres in depth, and it's got a height of about 3.2 metres. We've got some photographs of the stables as we move through the presentation. It comprises 2 stables, a tap room, a hay room and a feed store, and it's constructed of timber cladding with a pitch roof. It's domestic stabling for the applicant that lives at Green Acres, that's 57 Chainhouse Lane. Would you like to move down, Debbie? So there we are. We can see the block of the stables there, and we can see that they're well screened you can just go back, well screened to the boundaries with existing mature vegetation. The access to the stables is taken from Chainhouse Lane itself, running south past 2 new bungalows. It's recently been upgraded to serve the development to the north. So effectively, the site's in the green belt, but essential facilities for outdoor sport and recreation are not in appropriate development. They're entirely acceptable within a green belt location, and the design of this stable block accords with the council's SPD in terms of stable block development in the rural development SPD. So effectively, we've considered it sufficiently sited away to not cause any harm to residential amenity, and we've brought it forward to members with a recommendation for approval. That'll do. Yeah.
Okay, Catherine, thanks for your presentation. Right, we don't have any registered speakers, but we have Councillor Mrs. Smith.
I certainly feel like after the Lord Mayor's show. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'd like to thank you for allowing this application to come before you this evening.
Mr. and Mrs. Gardner of 59 Chain House Lane are away and therefore unable to come this evening. This is a retrospective application following some years ago the demolition of a redundant stable block to allow for a building with an annex at the rear of the present property. This was subsequently changed and we now have 2 houses plus 2 garages in the green belt. I don't think from the slide you can actually see that at the side of the house between Greenacres and the gardener's house, there is a driveway. And this driveway has actually been used so that they could have access to the building of the 2 houses. That driveway has actually been raised by over 3 foot and extended into the site. The height and weight of the drive have pushed onto Mr. and Mrs. Gardner's fence to the point that it is having to be replaced. But the bigger problem is that the water from the Greenacres site is now draining into number 59, into the garden, the garage and the pathways, flooding on a regular basis. Mrs. Gardner is disabled and finds mobility very difficult, so one of her pleasures is the enjoyment of her garden, which has become unusable on many occasions. What has this to do with tonight's application, you may ask? I would urge the committee to impose the strongest possible restrictions on the new stable block so that we will not be in the situation that we are now, where we have this problem with the drive that is facilitating the building of those houses. The unintentional consequences of allowing the first development has now had enormous issues for the gardeners. It has taken 3 years to get to this point, and I understand there is a new build at the front of the plots to be on the cards very soon, which will allow this heightened drive to remain for goodness knows how long, prolonging again the problems for Mr. and Mrs. Gardner. I understand that the levels should be returned to the original height once the buildings are finished. But if the restrictions are not put in place, the applicant, they could be still waiting for many years for this level to be put back to its original position. So therefore, I would like very much to urge you to put on the strongest conditions that you can to restrict the fact that this new stable block will not be able to go forward at any time in the future for redevelopment to building. I know this one is for residential, not residential use, for private use, and the other one was for commercial, but nevertheless, things do move on in time, and I would be very grateful if the committee, I'm assuming it is going to be passed this evening because there is nothing to stop it being passed, but I would just like those restrictions. And I'm very grateful for allowing me to speak this evening. And I know I've taken a bit of a liberty, but I am very concerned about the level of that drive and the impact it's having on Mr. and Mrs. Gardner and the length of time it has taken for these developments to actually come to fruition. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Margaret Smith, sorry. I'm more used to seeing Councillor Michael Green sitting there. Mr. Selkeld, unfortunately, you haven't registered to speak, and protocol says I can't let you. Okay. All right. I do apologise, but it's protocol, isn't it? It is. Yes, if you'd like, Catherine, before I open it. Oh, Councillor Michael Green, are you wanting to speak on this? Do you want to wait till after Councillor Michael Green's spoken?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to speak as the neighbouring ward council and parish councillor for the area. You'll be pleased to know that I will be brief because you've considered more than enough this evening. I've spoken to Mr. and Mrs. Gardner, the neighbours, on previous occasions, and what they've had to face has been quite significant in terms of what anybody should face as residents. And I would agree with the comments that have been made by Councillor Mrs Smith this evening. I just hope that the conditions are as strong as possible so that we can give some resolution and some hope of this problem. Did that cut out? The problem being resolved moving forward so that the amenity of the residents that neighbour the site can be protected moving forward. I understand, looking at the application, that you're more than likely going to approve this evening. I'm not going to try to argue against that because it meets the criteria. But thank you for allowing me to speak.
Okay, Councillor Green, you're quite welcome. That's all the representations. Councillor Smith, do you want to?
I'll speak on that. Just in view of what Councillor Mrs Smith has said and Councillor Green has said, is there any other conditions that could be added this that might help? I know not this application, but previous applications that have gone seriously wrong. Before I speak on the subject.
Thank you, Chair. I think probably for the benefit of committee, and I did have a lengthy telephone conversation with, well, Councillor Mrs Smith yesterday regarding this application, and the concerns that have been raised don't relate to this application per se. The raised driveway is a haul road for residential development. It is not within the red edge of this planning application. So we cannot consider any impact from that development as part of this application. This is a standalone application and it does accord with the council's policies. However, what I did assure Councillor Mrs Smith in our conversation is that we have had enforcement officers out to investigate whether there's any matters that we can take action in relation to other works that have been ongoing on site, the status of that road, and it is some time now since there's been a visit, and I have asked the enforcement team to actually carry out a visit next week and to use any powers that we have to address any outstanding matters on that adjoining site. So whilst I understand why Councillor Mrs Smith has called the item into committee, and obviously we will try to address those outside of this particular process, this application does not include the areas of concern. It doesn't include the whole road that's been referred to, and on its own merits, it does accord with the council's policies for stable development. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. If I can just now I've heard that and reiterate some of what's been said. Unfortunately, sometimes at home I do pick the phone up when somebody rings and they are very, very long and distraught conversations. I've spoken to both of the Mr. and Mrs. Gardner, and they're in a bit of a state, I have to say, and it should not be allowed. That said, I don't think there's anything wrong with this application, Chair, and I'll propose approval.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Smith. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Smith. He's proposed with all policies, so I'll second.
Do we have any other proposals? Oh, okay, so can we go to the vote? This is for approval.
Thank you, Chair. Members have voted unanimously to approve the application, subject to conditions.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Alex. Thank you all for attending this evening's meeting of the Planning Committee. Next meeting scheduled for Thursday, the 26th of June 2025. And just